Dear Excellencies, dear friends, dear guests, thank you so much for joining us for this event. And first of all, I would like to thank all the artists who sent us photos, which are displayed at the entrance here. I would like also to thank everybody who sent a video message. The messages are also displayed outside. And then, of course, I would like to thank our moderator, Najat Rochdi, to be here, and our panelists, Ronnie Chatah, His Excellency Andreas Kindl, Moussa Khoury, Majzoub, Nizar Saghieh, and Reina Sfeir. And of course, I would like to thank Anna Fleischer and the Heinrich Böll Foundation in supporting this event. I will be really very short. Today is the 17th of July. The 17th of July is the day of international justice. The 17th of July is also Lokman's birthday. Today he would be 60 years old, 60 years young. He could have many years in front of him. Years he could have spent writing articles or books, commenting on the news, making films, or just enjoying life. But instead, Lokman was assassinated almost 18 months ago, and no justice has been done. Nobody has been accused. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been judged for a crime, an execution, which happened almost in the open. Lokman is terribly missed by me, his family, his friends, and by many others who share in the same calling to examine the past and to struggle on a path towards a more just future. But we are not alone for asking for justice in Lebanon. With us are the families of many other political assassinations. With us are the family and survivors of the port explosion. With us are the families of the disappeared. With us are the former Lebanese detainees in Syrian prisons. With us are the many survivors of the Lebanese civil war. And with us are the many others who have been fighting for a long time against the culture of impunity and for accountability in Lebanon. We are calling for the same, justice, which is defined by the UN as a basic human right. Justice can have different forms, and that is what we are here to discuss. What does justice look like for Lebanon? With today's event, we hope to institutionalize the 17th of July and to celebrate International Justice Day each year in the future, until justice for Lebanon is achieved. Thank you.
صاحبات وأصحاب السعادة، السيدات والسادة، مساء الخير. لبنان والعدالة ولقمان يسهران علينا ومعا هذا المساء. على نية هذا الثلاثي تداعينا كما فعلنا وسنفعل المرة تلو المرة. ما أحوج لبنان المدمر وبلاد الجوار المنكوبة والعالم إلى من يؤمن بالعدالة، هذه النجمة البعيدة الخفرة ويعمل على إحقاقها. كتب لقمان مسائلا تاريخ حروبنا الأهلية المتناسلة، كتب يقول: إن النسيان بعض من العفو العام الذي لا يني هذا البلد يعفوه بلا كلالة عن نفسه وسيرته وارتكاباته. نحن هنا معا كي لا ننسى وكي نقرع بقوة أبواب عدالة صماء، عدالة ميأسة تضيع الأعمار في دهاليزها، عدالة يهزأ منها الأقوياء مرتكبو الشناعات والاغتيالات والمجازر، وما أكثرهم في هذه اللحظة التاريخية، القارنة بين الأوبئة والحروب وانعدام الرؤية. تنادينا الليلة لنكون معا، فلا تمر علينا هذه الساعة كسائر أيامنا المظلمة. هذا اليوم يوم العدالة الجنائية الدولية ويوم ميلاد لقمان. العدالة نجمتنا الخفرة، ضئيلة شريدة في عين القتلة وصناع الدمار، بيد أنها في عين لقمان ومونيكا وعيني هي الطريق وإليها المقصد. العدل للبنان، العدل للقمان، والسلام عليهما ولهما.
Good evening. I would like to just say a couple of sentences, and I would like to start by again expressing my deepest condolences to you, the family and the friends and those who worked with Lokman. It is not an easy day to remember him on this day, on his 60th birthday, what would have been his 60th birthday, and which falls on the same day as the International Day for Justice. So my deepest condolences once again. The loss is still felt very greatly. I will not take a lot of time. I just wanted to express from our side at the Heinrich Böll Foundation, who is the German Green political foundation, that we are in solidarity, of course, with Monika and her family and with Lokman's family, but also on a broader scale, we are standing in solidarity with the fight for justice and accountability in Lebanon and beyond. Because we believe that it is an important step to include in all of our discussions when we talk about the crisis, when we talk about everything that the country is currently going through, to not forget justice and accountability. Our namesake Heinrich Böll said, "Involvement is the only way to remain realistic." And I think this is something that we need to remember in all of our struggle and our work. And I'm very glad to see so many of you here, and I hope that we together can continue the conversation on justice and accountability. Thank you.
Whoever needs headphones, translation is here.
Good evening, everybody. Masa al-Khair. It's very difficult to add anything after what we heard. It is International Day of Justice, but actually justice is every day. It cannot be only one day. Justice is actually the fight for accountability, and there is no other way to fight for accountability but through justice. And crimes cannot remain unpunished, because that's really a trigger for a society that will break down any time. Impunity cannot continue, and justice is a must for all the Lebanese, not only for the families of the victim, but for the families of the victims even more, because they need to heal. And without justice, it will be very difficult for those families to heal. But they need also to reconcile with the past to better prepare the future. For today, for Lokman Slim, for the political assassination, for the crimes, for the victims of the blast of the port of Beirut, justice must be served. It must be served. And it also won't happen unless the judiciary system is independent. We have today with us wonderful panelists who are going actually to share with us their knowledge, I guess our common frustration as well, and hopefully hope also for a better future, because we are all here because we believe, we are all here because we don't give up, each one of us from its own position, and it's not only those who are sitting here, it's all of you, and as long as the fight is there, it means that the cause is still there too. So, ahlan wa sahlan li Ronnie, thank you very much for being here. Andreas, I mean for tonight, I will skip the excellency if you don't mind. Moussa, Aya, very good seeing you. Nizar and Reina, طبعا. Thank you very much for being here. It will be very much more of a discussion than presentation. None of you is going to make a presentation. I have the very tough mission to interrupt you if you speak too much, because we still want, of course, the audience and the participant to be able to ask questions and to say whether they agree or not, and maybe come up also with their own suggestion. And I will start with you, Aya, if you don't mind. You know, youth empowerment start also by giving the floor to the youngest among us here. We all know that Lebanon has ratified several human rights conventions, and that is very important. It's part of the international commitment of Lebanon as a country. So there is an accountability there vis-à-vis that. And this should guarantee also a fair trial and accountability. So from your point of view, what was done so far? And what are the ways for Lebanon to really be clear and up to its obligation? Over to you.
Thank you so much for having me here today and having us speak on such an important topic. Lokman is never far from our minds, so it's a really great opportunity to remember him collectively today. As you mentioned, Lebanon has signed on to treaties that guarantee essential rights like the right to a fair trial and the right to redress for grave human rights abuses. However, we repeatedly hear several excuses for why Lebanon is either unwilling or unable to live up to its obligations. One of the main things that we hear is that Lebanese law conflicts with international law. So, for example, this was the excuse that was given with regards to the fact that the Judicial Council in Lebanon, the body to which the Beirut blast case was referred to, doesn't meet fair trial standards. And the response that we were constantly getting is that this is Lebanese law. But actually also under Lebanese law, international law takes supremacy over domestic law. And therefore, the fact that domestic law is opposed, is in conflict with international law and Lebanon's international legal obligations means that international law should come first. The second excuse that we hear is that Lebanon just doesn't have the capabilities, the judicial capabilities, in order to ensure certain standards related to fair trial, such as the right to a speedy trial. And this is due to the economic crisis, but also due to shortages in judges, particularly after judges are leaving, lack of electricity, lack of resources. And then the third issue that we hear constantly is political interference in the work of the judiciary. And we do hear this from judges as well. It's not a secret that judges are appointed based on their sectarian affiliations and their loyalties to political parties. And so many of them owe their presence on certain courts and their career progression to the sectarian leaders who appointed them. And therefore, they don't want to be the ones to step over the undrawn or invisible red lines. And when they do, as Judge Bitar did, for example, they are sidelined, there are legal challenges that have come up against them. And this is why we currently are in a state of seeing judges trying to recuse themselves without any legal basis from sensitive cases because they don't want to come up against the sectarian warlords who appointed them.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aya. Actually, Andreas, that brings me directly to you because Aya was mentioning a number of gaps, and you are a very important partner, through cooperation and through support, to support the country with good governance, with justice, with technical assistance, and so on. And a lot of the excuses, that were mentioned are definitely very easy to address, through good cooperation. So from your point of view, what do you think that the international, tell us, first of all, what did the international community do to help fight against the impunity? Because that's obviously is a guiding principle. But also, what do you think the international community should do better and do more?
Okay, I start with a bummer because I encounter this myself every time. Diplomats have to tread a fine line. Whenever I send around a tweet, I'm reminded that I should not interfere into internal affairs of this country, which refers to Article 41 of the 1961 Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And there it says that I have the duty not to interfere into internal affairs. So as a diplomat, of course, this is difficult to define for myself and for my country what is internal affairs of Lebanon. But when I'm concerned, when a German national is killed by the explosion in the port, and a second, Sarah's son, Isaac, is also German, is being killed. So, of course, I am concerned, and I feel fully entitled to urge that there is a speedy, a speedy trial or a speedy process. Thank you. And it shouldn't take. It should not be obstructed. It shouldn't take 2 years to come to this point. So I think what international community can do is, is expand the possibilities we have to the utmost, and not hide behind regulations that are not really there. Ask authorities to do what they can, urge them to do what they can. We have also, in the European Union, set up a sanctions framework, July 2021, which looks at 3 points. One of them is obstruction to the political process, and the other one is obstruction to or prevention of reforms approved by the Lebanese government itself, including the independence of judiciary and others. So, of course, there's a constant reminder, and this is our mandate, our task, a constant reminder to the government to push forward with those reforms they have themselves approved of, and are not pushing forward. So this is, I think, what we can do.
Thank you very much. So based on that, Nizar, do you think that there is a role for the international justice as an alternative actually for justice to be served?
Can I speak Arabic? Or
أكيد.
طيب يعني أكيد أحيانا بيتم المطالبة باللجوء للمحاكم الدولية، وحصل هالشيء بلبنان بال2005، وحتى بعد الانفجار المرفأ كان في أصوات عم تطالب بهالشيء. بس هل هالشيء يعني عملي؟ هل هالشيء بيضمن مستقبل للبلد؟ هل ممكن أنه يكون كل ما تصير جريمة بلبنان أنه يكون الحل باللجوء لمحكمة دولية؟ وهل المجتمع الدولي حاضر وجاهز كل ما بده لبنان عدالة أنه يقول أنا موجود، تفضلوا أنا بدي أعملكم محكمة؟ ولا الجرائم الكبرى اللي عم تصير بلبنان وهي سبب ودافع وفرصة ومناسبة حتى نحن كلياتنا نتوحد للمطالبة بإصلاح المؤسسات للمستقبل لتضمن عدالة لكل اللبنانيين؟ هيدا سؤال مركزي. نحن طلبنا بال2005 المحكمة الدولية، وكان وقتها جاهز المجتمع الدولي عفوا لهيدا الاستحقاق لأسباب كثيرة وإلها علاقة بمصالح الدول وإلى آخره. بس بال 2020 هالشيء ما حصل، وبالتالي تعلمنا انه ما فينا نضل نطالب بالمحاكم الدوليه. بالاخر في جهد وطني بده ينعمل، في عمل سياسي بلبنان بده ينعمل لاعاده مؤسسات العداله لكل اللبنانيين، وبتصور هيدا هو اللي بيضمن للكل. اليوم نحن عم نشوف، اكيد اليوم نحن بمناسبه اغتيال سياسي، ولكن اليوم اللا عداله ونظام الافلات من العقاب معمم على كل شيء، من المصارف للبيئه للجرائم الاغتيالات السياسيه للمرفأ لغيره. نحن بنظام مجرم، الشعب تحول لضحايا لنظام ما بيتعاقب. وبالتالي اليوم اذا عم تقولي مين المسؤول عن هيدا الشيء، اليوم الامبيونتي سيستم عنده وجه يلي هو نظام الزعامات. نظام الزعامات يلي مش ممكن الواحد ان يحاسبهم. بيجي القاضي بيطلع على زعيم قدامه مرتكب مثل كأنه حدا قدام أسد ضخم جدا، قدام مارد بنظام مثل هيدا، بيصير مستحيل من المستحيلات أنه يتحاسب. وبالتالي خلينا نطلع على الأمور كما هي. نحن بسياق اليوم معركة كبيرة بين كل المواطنين وكل الزعماء، وهيدا هو اللي بيرد نظام العدالة للبنان بتخيل على المستوى القريب. فمشان هيك يعني نحن دائما فيك توقفيني بس كنت بدي اقول مشان هيك نحن كمفكره قانونيه دائما الرهان تبعنا انه قد ما تكون المصاعب كبيره، قد ما تكون المشاكل كبيره، بس لابد من خوض هيدا المسار يلي هو بدنا العداله وبلبنان.
Thank you. Well, it says a lot, Reina. I mean, he mentioned, Nizar mentioned, of course, the STL. Do you feel that it achieved its objective?
كمان رح أحكي بالعربي. الاس-تي-ال هي طلبها لبنان مثل ما قال نزار، وأنشئت لحتى تلاحق وتحاكم المسؤولين عن اغتيال 14 شباط اللي أودى بحياة رئيس الحريري و22 آخرين، وسببت أكثر من 220 جريح. أنا بتصور إنه بعد شيء طويل أكيد، يعني ما كان كتير هين، وبعد ما كان في كتير يمكن تعاون من الدولة اللبنانية، قدرت beyond reasonable doubt إنه تثبت إنه في أشخاص دق حق أعدوا ونظموا هيدي الجريمة بطريقة كتير دقيقة، خاصة إنه اغتيال شخص مثل رئيس الحريري يعني مع الكونفوي اللي كان معه 6 سيارات، مع الاي اس اف يلي معه، مع السيجنالز اللي بيقدر يلقط المتفجرات عن بعد، يعني لحتى حدا يقدر، قدرنا مع أكثر من 300 شاهد، أكثر من 171 ألف مستند، كل هيدول أثبتوا قدروا يخبرونا مين عمل هيدي الجريمة. يمكن الحقيقة بعدها ناقصة، بس أنا بقول إنه في طلع حكم ب 2500 صفحة، 2000 بكون مضيقة 2621 صفحة، وطلع كمان من بعده استئناف. أنا يعني ما بعرف إذا حدا منكم قري هيدول، حدا منكم قري هيدا اللي هو الأحكام؟ يعني هو كتير هين ننتقد المحكمة وقتها ما نكون قاريين. بقى أنا بعزمكم إنه تقروهم، لأنه فيهم كتير أشياء بتخليكم، لأنه هو منا opinion، هو اللي مش حدا قال أنا برأيي حدا، هون في دلائل، كتير دلائل، وكانت جريمة كتير كتير صعبة، وبتخبر بالتفاصيل المملة شو صار ب 2700 صفحة. أنا بدعيكم أن تقروهم، لأنه أنا بالنسبة لي إنه فيك، أنا بفهم، أنا لبنانية وبفهم في كتير انتقادات للمحكمة، بس أنا بقى إنه الأوتكم كان بالنسبة لي كان منيح، وأكيد في lessons learned، وهول المحاكم الجديدة، وكل المحاكم الدولية بتاخد وقت. الاي سي تي واي كل يعني ميلوسيفيتش ما وصلوا له من غير ما أول شيء ما أخذوا السولجر الصغير، بياخدوا وقت هالمحاكم، وبدنا نكون نحن عنا يمكن نفس كمان طويل.
ميرسي كثير رينا. هلا رينا بتقلنا أن العدالة الدولية يعني عطت نتائج، ونزار بأن أنا لازم نركز طبعا على العدالة بلبنان وعلى السيستم بلبنان. طب موسى، أنت بالنسبة لك وين الأولويات وشو أحسن طريقة لنوصل صحيح للعدالة؟ I'm sorry, I switched to Arabic.
No, it's okay. I will answer in English. What's the best way to reach justice? to reach justice, you have to start by having the will to render justice. Justice, the judicial authority in Lebanon, like in many countries, is an authority, but it is an authority among other authorities that form the state. Presently, there is no will. There is no will in any of the authorities in Lebanon to do their job. And we are presently with a judicial authority that is not willing to do its job. Nizar just said before me, presently we are in a total lack of justice. We do not have justice. The tribunals have been not working for months on every level and not only on criminal level. So presently we are out of justice. What did we have before? Before we had some kind of a justice. We didn't have a full justice. We have justice with a lot of impunities. And again, if I want to translate what Nizar said, he said we have impunities, but we have also immunities. Between impunity and immunity, there is one letter, which is the M and the P. Practically in Lebanon, when there is justice, we can have an efficient justice for some people and a lack of justice for other people. So what I can say is, yes, impunity, but also immunity.
Thank you very much. Impunity, immunity. Ronnie, I mean, it looks like from what we heard that there is really a need to find an entry point and a leverage. How do you see the role of the civil society in addressing that and pushing for that?
It's an honor to do this on Lokman Slim's birthday. I think he'd be shining at the age of 60. I think my father would be shining at the age of 70. I will start by going big, and then I'll answer the question. I think it's not my place to debate or disagree. I do that on my podcast. I think half the audience has been on the podcast, some of the panelists as well. So I won't go down that road. I'll just expand. I think it's not enough just to call for an independent judiciary. And I think the ills of sectarianism, corruption, lack of accountability, I don't think that's the story. And I think there is a larger picture that any society would fall apart under. Mm-hmm. There's an external security situation that's based in this country. And I can go even a step further. I would bet that Iran's military regime survivability depends on Lebanon. So that kind of situation can cause any society to crash. I think Lebanon has crashed under that weight. And it's not just Iran. You go back, we mentioned briefly 2005, and prior to that, the Syrian regime played a fundamental role. But it's not just 15 years of occupation and mismanagement. It's nearly 3 decades of involvement. So now you're going back to nearly 50 years of a situation where the worst of society is in the foreground, and in the background is the dialogue that any country would have about reform. But to get to reform, the fundamentals of reform, and this includes the change independent MPs today, this includes civil society aspirations, which are not new. This goes back in time now. The fundamental, foundational starting point really requires going back to a time Lebanon was governable and was not under this security dominion. Now you're going back to 1970. I think the dialogue today has to take those considerations into account. I think civil society has started to do so. But now we're in 2022, 2 years after the largest non-nuclear blast in modern history. That's a burden on Lebanon. Housing ammonium-grade nitrate in our port is a security situation for Lebanon. It's not about sectarianism. It's not about individuals that are corrupt. It's a burden. And the leftovers of that stockpile destroyed the city. So I think any country in that situation would collapse. And civil society says the right things, but I don't think they have the tools necessary to confront a security nightmare that is Iran's survivability in Lebanon.
Well, yeah, really, bravo. Thank you. Thank you. But I mean,
Can we let them clap a little longer?
Yeah, please
No,
do,
I'm
please
joking.
do, please.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
You need it. خلاص? Can we move on?
Of course.
Thank you. So really, I mean, obviously, it's very complicated. It's a number of layers that needs really to be unpacked. But at the same time, I mean, do you think, Nizar, that calling on transitional justice is also something that can help actually push forward the agenda?
اوكي ترانزيشن جاستس عداله انتقاليه يعني في نظام عم ينتقل من شيء لشيء وهو لم يتم بعد تحول بالنظام اللبناني بعدنا بنفس النظام يلي هو نظام زعامات يلي بميزه عن النظام الطائفي هيدا ما له على نظام الزعامات يلي هي نظام رؤساء قبائل عمليا يلي عم ماسكين البلد ويلي عم بيتحكموا بكل شيء فالعداله الانتقاليه بينحكى فيها بكونتكست عم نعمل انتقال للديمقراطيه يلي كان الهدف انه يبلش ب 17 تشرين ولكن للاسف قوه الحراك اللي حصلت ادت لبعض التحولات ولكن بعد ما انتقلنا لنظام اخر. بهيدا الوقت المهم نقدر نحدد بتصور شو المشاكل الاساسيه. يعني مثلا نحن بال 2005 وقتها صارت المحكمة الدولية كان واحدة من الاشياء اللي قالها كوفي أنان وكان كتير مهم هيدا الشيء انه صحيح هذه المحكمة رح تكون مكلفة بس رح تكون مثل ورافعة للعدالة بلبنان وبشان هيك حتى لو كانت مكلفة رح نعملها. اللي صار لا 14 أدار ولا 8 أدار اعتبروها رافعة لهيدا الشيء. 14 أدار ولا واحد قدم مشروع لاستقلال القضاء ولا حدا عمل مشروع لتحسين العدالة بلبنان ولا حدا. و8 أدار يلي كانت تحكي بالسيادة ما السيادة كمان سيادة قضائية ما بدكم أن تروحوا على المحاكم الدولية اعملوا محاكم وطنية قادرة تحل مشاكل الناس كمان ما عملوا شيء. فالاثنين بتصور فشلوا أنهم يروحوا على أبعد من منطقهم وبين أنه منطقهم هو براغماتي أكثر ما هو مبني حقيقة على قيم أو على وقائع. أنا مصر أنه يلي بشوف أكيد اللي حكى روني صحيح إلى حد كبير ولكن هيدا الشيء ما بيشرح نظام اللا عدالة بلبنان. هيدا بيشرح أشياء تانية. نظام اللا عدالة بلبنان اللي بيشرحه هو فعلا هالتحكم الكبير لمجموعات لزعامات مجموعات كل واحد منه عم بيجرب ياخد اقطاع بالإدارة كل واحد عم بياخد اقطاع بالعدالة عم بيجرب يخلي جزء من لبنان تابع له من دون أي محاسبة ومن دون أي مساءلة. وهيدا اللي بيشرح اليوم ليش البنوكي مثلا ما حدا عم بيقدر يلاحق والأمور الكبيرة بعدها كلياتها بنفس المكان. ليش أصغر إنسان بقضايا العمل أكثر من مئات الألوف من الناس انكحشت من العمل ما حدا قدر يحصل حقه بالمحاكم. فالإمبيونيتي سيستم واللا عدالة حقيقة متمادة بشكل أكبر بكتير مما بنفترض. الكسارات بلبنان المنتشرة البحر والشط يلي كلياته مأخوذ وإلى آخره كلياته هيدا بدنا نفكر فيه لما بدنا نحكي عن نظام عدالي ونظام انتقالي. المهم اليوم نقدر نحدد شو القيم يلي بدنا نبني الوطن عليها حتى يكون في مشروع متماسك من ناس كتار يقدروا يحملوه ويخوضوا المعركة السياسية تبعه.
Thank you, Nizar. It looks, Ronnie, you don't agree with what he said.
No, I'll expand. It's not that I disagree. On the contrary, I'll just try to add to that. I don't think it's an issue of March 14 or March 8 doing the right thing or the wrong thing. I think all of these successful and the attempted assassinations, and the Special Tribunal for Lebanon addresses multiple assassinations and successful and attempted. I think the reason that tribunal exists is because you cannot go after these parties in Lebanon. So I think that's the failure of a country that cannot do its own justice on its terms. And I think if you go further, we have Tariq Bitar, who from my understanding is one of the most qualified judges, investigative judges, whatever, in this country. He cannot do his job. I don't think that's because of March 14 or March 8 discourse. And I don't think the pressure on someone like him to not be able to do his job is not Lebanese society or Lebanese fabric. I think that's a security problem for anyone entering that story. And I'll just say one more thing. It's not about, it's when people cross that security line. This includes Lokman Slim. When you cross that line, you get killed. So the March 14 figures that did try to cross that line, some of them are intelligence officials, some of them are talented. I mean, I was at the Bassett Fleihan statue commemoration last week. There's no reason this man should be dead. You have journalists, diplomats, intelligence officials, and all of the above that were killed by crossing into the security matrix that we all want to get rid of.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, Ron. It's like you are saying that impunity exists only in those cases, while impunity exists also in other cases which are not linked to political assassination. So, I mean, so yes, I understand fully your point, but what we are trying to discuss here is really to find leverages and entry points where justice is really addressed across the board. It's not only for political assassination, for the victims of the explosion of the port and for all the other injustices that are happening in this country. And without really systematically approaching it, we are not, I mean, Lebanon is not going to get there, right?
52 years of no agency in determining your fate. Lost sovereignty, lost independence, whatever you want to call it. This is now the collateral damage to at least 2 generations that have lived under this weight. And everything else that is collapsing today is a byproduct. You can get into cosmetics. You can actually apply things on the fringe. You can have competent ministers in today's government, for example, that can actually do limited stuff. But if you want to actually overhaul things and finally reform the system, you have to lift this burden off of our shoulders. There's simply no other way to get there.
Reina.
Yeah, if I may add, I agree with both of Nizar and Ronnie, بس أنا اللي بدي أقوله إنه نحن مشكلتنا الأساسية مع اللا عدالة إنه نحن قبل ما يكون عنا عدالة ما عنا وطن. نحن اليوم إذا أخذنا وراءنا لليو إن نحن منا بلد وقلنا لهم فيكم تعترفون إنه نحن بلد بالقانون الدولي العام هن في 3 مكونات أساسية للبلد. حدود مرسمين بنعرف كل المشاكل اللي عنا إياها بالموضوع. السيادة نعرف إنه منا موجودة وشعب بده نفس الشيء وكمان ما بنعرف إنه إذا كلنا بدنا نفس الشيء. قبل ما إنه يكون نحكي بالعدالة نحن لازم يكون نقبل إنه نعمل وطن أول شيء وبعدين هونيك يعني بتصور المبادئ بصيروا يمكن أوتوماتيكية أسرع تطبقوا. والشغل الثاني أكيد هو الفساد. الفساد يلي يمكن هو مش بس على نطاق السياسيين الفساد يعني للأسف يعني الشعب كمان يعني كلنا يمكن على قصص يمكن على نطاق أصغر وأكبر وهيك يعني مشاركين. إحنا هيدا بالكالتشر تبعنا هيدا الشيء لازم يغير. وهيدول الشغلتين اعتبرنا صاروا موجودين بالنسبة لإلي كمان ليصير عنا عدالة في كتير أشياء تقنيات مثلا ما عنا إياها. مثلا بالتحقيق المرفأ في قاضي تحقيق واحد. تعرفوا انه باوكلاهوما سيتي ب 1995 وقت صار البومبينج كان في 2592 محقق. نحن عندنا محقق عدلي واحد. يعني كيف بده يعمل شغله اصلا لو خلوه لو كل هذا الشيء كيف يعمل شغله؟ بعدين نحن ما عندنا نظام حمايه الشهود. بكل الكيسز الكبار يلي هن بوليتيكال المرفأ كيف بده يقدم واحد يقول أنا شفت شيء إذا ما في حدا يحميه؟ أنا كنت شفت مرة قاضي وكان عم يخبرني قد إيه في أشياء بالقضاء وكوربشن وقلت له فيك تقرب وتيجي تحكي تخبرنا تحميني؟ ما في حماية. هيدول الأشياء لازم ينحلوا كمان لحتى لنوصل للعدالة. غير أكيد وطن وفساد وأشياء تقنية كمان.
Yeah, but you talked about this, but I think there are also a number of issues regarding the rights of the accused and the right of the prisoner. So maybe, Moussa, can you please elaborate on that?
I would just like to elaborate on what you said. I might not agree with Dr. Sfeir about nation and state, different subject. Practically to go back to justice, because justice is what brings us together here today. What we have of justice is very limited. Very limited, once again, by all the impunity. The impunity, it's very limited by our acceptance of amnesty. And as you know, amnesty comes from amnesia, and amnesia is not even a pardon. It's just asking those victims to forget what happened to them. We are not even asking those who did something to ask to be forgiven. We are just asking those victims to just forget what happened to them. So again, justice in Lebanon is presently inexistent. When it existed, it had some limitations. The main limitation was not to address anything which was political assassination, because there was some kind of a taboo saying justice should not look into those cases. Those assassinations are to be kept out of the justice. If I go back to what we are doing today for Lokman Slim assassination, we are fighting to reach justice in the system that we have. Nizar talked and Reina talked about international justice. We are not there yet. When Lokman was assassinated 2 years ago, the family said we want international justice, i.e. a justice at the level of the international standards. We, as a family, are following with what we have of national justice. We are seeking justice in Lebanon. If we don't reach it, we'll go outside.
Thank you. I still think that it's important to address the right-based approach, you know, because this is also part of the justice. So Aya, maybe you can tell us more. And I have heard a number of stories regarding really the abuse and the violation of the basic rights also of those who are accused, with the waiting for years and years for trials and so on. So we need to address justice from all its components and not only one lens. Aya.
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, the rights of the accused are also very important and constantly being infringed on in Lebanon. So I'll give the example of the Beirut blast case, where there are currently about 15 people who have been in pretrial detention for over 2 years. The investigation is currently suspended with no prospect of it resuming anytime soon. So you have individuals who have been in prison for more than 2 years, and it looks like their imprisonment is indefinite. And this is allowed to happen because under the laws related to the Judicial Council, there are no limits on pretrial detention. And so the judge can hold those individuals indefinitely in pretrial detention, and the decisions of the investigative judge aren't subject to any form of appeal. And therefore, there's no other review, no other judge that can look into the decisions of the investigative judge to keep those individuals detained pretrial. This is, the main problem that we're facing now with the case of the detained due to the port blast explosion. But also, there are several other violations that we documented, including the fact that those individuals still don't know the charges against them. The charges range from homicide to causing pollution. And the individuals who are in detention also range from the head of the port and the head of the customs administration to low-level employees who were working in welding works on the day of the explosion. None of them know the specific charges against them. They're presented just with a list of charges that could be applicable to them. In addition, many of them were detained at the beginning of the right after the explosion, without a judicial order. And so some of them spent up to 2 weeks in detention arbitrarily because there was no judicial decision to detain them. Many of them aren't allowed to meet with their lawyers in private. There are always two guards with them in the room during their meetings. So these are a whole host of problems that we've documented in the case of the port detainees, but of course, they aren't exclusive to the port detainees. These are problems that we document on a daily basis in Lebanon's justice system.
Thank you, Aya. Andreas, I'm coming back to you for two things. The first one, unfortunately, there are also European victims, among those victims of the port explosion. And obviously, there is accountability in those countries, and there is a need for justice in those countries. Otherwise, everybody will have to resign, if they are not serving justice. So can this be used as a leverage here using those cases actually and using it as a leverage for Lebanon? That's my first question. My second one, in many cases, I know that a number of countries are really putting compliance with human rights as really a criteria actually to support. Is this something that you think can apply to justice as well? Over to you.
Thank you, Najat. In our case, we have a prosecutor in Germany following the killing of the two German nationals, colleague of mine and Isaac. The problem we have or the problem the prosecutor in Germany has is that he has no access to the documents or the witnesses and so on and so on. So he has to rely fully on Tarek Bitar's final report. He will then start his investigation on the basis of what Tarek Bitar has found out in his report, and he will maybe come then and discuss with him and others, and maybe then there will be a chance to see some of the witnesses. So I don't see that at the moment there is a leverage we have in terms of from the judicial side, from German judicial side on Tarek Bitar or on the justice system here. I think what there could be rather is a political pressure, of course, because we have an interest that the interests of our nationals are guarded. So this is also one of my tasks as an ambassador. So I see rather a political chance for pressure on pushing on the trial, on the investigation here. But not a judicial possibility. On conditions in terms of human rights and so on, on our support, financial support or other support for this country, yes, of course, this is enshrined in many of the documents and the notes, exchange of notes and so on, whatever we do. I'm not sure we've ever stopped any cooperation with Lebanon on the basis of not serving or preserving the human rights situation here. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not that explicit either in the documents, but I don't think we use this as a condition for our support. What we do as international community, of course, is we say that there's humanitarian aid, of course, yeah, there's humanitarian imperative, unconditioned, but there's no long-term support, no infrastructure support before any reforms are being done. But that's a different caseload. Can I?
Yes, you can.
Add, thank you. On what Reina said on the length of the trial, the STL trial. I've been here only for 2 years, and I'm learning every day. And it's not for me to judge the expectations of the Lebanese towards the judiciary, but while preparing for this panel, I realized that we also in Germany, and maybe that is a contribution to the whole discussion, have sometimes trials that take a long time or judicial developments that take a long time. I give you one example. In German history until 1945 is well known. 6 million Jews were killed in concentration camps by Germans and others allied to Germans, but mostly by Germans. After the Second World War, there were the Nuremberg trial against crimes against humanity. 20 years later, there were the Auschwitz trials in Germany, for the first time properly done by German judges. But only in the year 2011, for the first time, so almost 60 years after the Second World War, more than 60 years after the Second World War, for the first time someone was judged in court because of indirect indirect support for killing someone in a concentration camp. This was an Ukrainian concentration camp guard. We have had roughly, I think, 50 last week or so, 50 investigations and some trials and so on. But it took a very long time to come to a status or an idea that should have been there much earlier, but it simply wasn't there. And when we talk about these big trials or these trials like the STL on Rafik Hariri, I think they have also a function in allowing or facilitating a historiographic reading of developments, which allow that maybe a whole nation can change its mind. I don't think that's the case with the STL, because for many reasons. One of the reasons I think is that it did not happen here. I think the last verdicts were hardly mentioned in the press here. It's not. There's no link to what happened, and I think that's a failure. And I think this is one of the disadvantages when you have international justice coming in. I think this would have been different if such a trial were possible in Lebanon. And it has a consequence for the potential narratives and the potential discussions that are possible in the country and in society.
Thank you, Andreas. I mean, that brings me to the question regarding, is there need actually to a renewed social contract? Because depending of the cases you are addressing and you are discussing, you won't have the same ask of justice from all the Lebanese. And therefore, this is really not something that is anchored and an ask that come from everybody as something that is a must. And I really would like to hear all of you on that. Nizar.
أول شيء ببلش أنه ننظر للعدالة فعلا كمفهوم أنه كل الناس متساويين وفي المصلحة العامة من خلالها عم تبين. بشان هيك يعني الانتباه لكل الفئات يلي متضررة من لا عدالة مهم حتى نعرف شو بدنا وتنعرف وين المشكل الحقيقي. أنا يعني بعرف أنه في اليوم اهتمام كبير بقضية الاغتيال السياسي وبعرف قديش مهم هيدا الشيء لحفظ الديمقراطية وكذا، ولكن المشكل أكبر من هيك. في مجازر حصلت بلبنان، في جرائم ضد الإنسانية وجرائم حرب حصلت وعم تحصل بلبنان وبالمنطقة، وهيدي كلها برات أي محاسبة. يعني لما انتهت الحرب ال 15 سنة بال 1990 كان في قانون عفو. هل استثنى المجازر والجرائم ضد الإنسانية مثل ما بيحصل باتفاقية جنيفا، مثل ما حصل بعد الحرب العالمية الثانية؟ لا، اللي استثنته هي الجرائم ضد القادة السياسيين. اعتبرت هيدا أخطر شيء أنه في فهون بلش أنه عم تختلط المفاهيم. نحن بدل ما نجي نعترف بالإنسان كإنسان وقد ايه أهميته كفرد وكبيئة وكوطن، عم نروح على تقديس الشخصيات السياسية إجمالاً بهيدا النظام يلي انعمل بعد العفو. وفعلاً كل نظام يلي بعد العفو كان مبني على هيدا النوع من التقديس. اليوم يلي صار بالمرفأ لتعطيل العدالة استعملوا الحصانات، استعملوا الهجوم على القضاء، استعملوا تهديد القضاء، التنمير على القضاء. كل هيدي الأساليب هي نفسها عم بيستخدموها بكل الأشياء التانية ولو بمستويات أخف، وبالتالي الأساليب كلها عم تستخدم. فمشان هيك عم أقول لما الواحد ببرر لحاله كل هالأساليب معناتها في شيء لازم يتزبط على هيدا المستوى، وفي وضوح بالرؤية لازم يرجع أنه كيف في مؤامرة على العدالة عم تنعمل من كل الفرقاء، ولازم أنه يتم التصدي لهيدي الشغلة بشكل موحد وتوحيدي لما بنشوف كل هيدي الأشياء. أنا ما بقدر أنسى أنه الأنهار بلبنان انقتلت ونحن عم نتفرج لأنه ما حدا قادر يحاسب المعمل اللي عم بكب السم فيها. ما فيني أنسى أنه الهواء بلبنان كله تلوث لأنه ما حدا قادر يجبر معمل يحط فلتر أو كذا. كل هيدي أمور اسمها عدالة بالآخر. بعتذر ما طولت.
لا بس بالآخر أنت بتحكي كمان على مسؤولية اللبنانيين، لأنه ما فينا بس نحكي على النظام أو على المؤسسات. اللبنانيين كمان عندهم مسؤولية في هيدا المجال.
تمام. أنت بموضوع المرفأ كان في لما بلشت قضية، أول ما بلشت الناس كلها كانت مع طارق بيطار. كل الناس يعني ب4 آب الماضي لأول مرة يمكن بتاريخ لبنان عندك عشرات الآلاف من الناس عم تهتف لقاضي وعم تقول للقاضي. هيدا الوضوح يلي انعمل بالرؤية وقتها ضد الحصانات وضد نظام وحماية الناس وإلى آخره، انعمل حملة طويلة عريضة بيشاركوا فيها كل الميديا وجزء كبير من الطبقة السياسية لحتى يضربوا هيدا الوضوح، وفجأة تحول القاضي هو المتهم. كانت القضية هي الضحايا وهي الناس، وفجأة قدروا ينجحوا بخطاب عام مدروس وماكيافيلي إذا بدك لحتى يحولوا التهمة على القاضي، مثل ما عم بيصير بكتير قضايا تانية عم تتحول التهمة من قضية عدالة لقضية على القاضي.
ما جاوبتني على مسؤولية اللبناني.
أكيد مسؤولية اللبناني، أكيد مسؤولية اللبناني، بس اللبناني يعني كمان ما تنسي أنه زاد كتير الوعي بعد 17 تشرين، زاد كتير مستوى الوعي والمعرفة بهيدا المحل والناس بدها تعرف، بس كمان زادت الحاجة كتير. وبالانتخابات الأخيرة قديش استثمروا الحاجة وقديش استغلوا الحاجة حتى يقدروا يحافظوا على مراكزهم ويحافظوا على الغالبية عندهم.
Thank you. رينا.
أنا رح جاوبك وبقول لك إنه نحن ما عنا حزب الانتماء للوطن أكيد، دونك ما عنا مواطنية، وهذا أكيد مشكل كتير كبير. وبالنسبة للمرفأ يعني حتى نجحوا إنه يقسموا المتضررين، يعني حتى المتضررين هلا مقسومين بهالموضوع. فالمشكل عندنا نحن كتير أكبر، بس مزبوط صار في وعي يعني، بس بعدنا كتير بعاد عنه صار، ولازم نقعد يعني. بالنسبة للأمنستي لو بالحرب مزبوط إنه الكل عفا كل على كل مدى، بس كان في شيء واحد بعد ماشي اللي هو قضايا المفقودين، لأنه قضايا المفقودين هي continuous crime، سو ما فيهم يشملها القانون. عن هيك دونك هذا الشيء الوحيد الكرام اللي بعد فينا نحكي فيه. وأنا يعني معنا السيدة وداد حلواني، ونحن بنشكر النضال السيدة وداد حلواني من 82 عم بتكافح، وما من يلي قليلين كتار ما تعبوا وكلوا، ويعني بعد في أكثر من 30 سنة قدرت تنتزع قانون بالنسبة للمفقودين والمخفيين قسرا بال 2018. أنا بالنسبة إلي قدوة لنا السيدة وداد، ولازم بتصور إنه كلنا نكون يعني نضلنا مآمنين إنه يعني ما عم نحكي بس تنحكي، لأنه عنا أمل إنه بدنا نظبط شيء وإن شاء الله بيزبط.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I'll add again, not to disagree. I'll add what I think about in terms of important occasions, which the ambassador mentioned 1945 as a fundamental change of circumstance. I would actually go to the more maybe cliche example of 1989, where East Germany and East Berlin spent months, if not years, trying to protest against a situation not under their control. The Berlin Wall collapses when that paradigm shifts. And 32 years later, it's unrecognizable today. You'd have to actually do your research to remember how bad things were in the eastern part of Berlin and in East Germany. If I'm not mistaken, the Berlin Wall was chipped as the Ta'if Agreement was signed. This is hours apart. If you fast forward 32 years later, look at this country and look at reform in this country. I think the aspirations are the same. And I think the goal for reform is the same goal. It's a shared goal. And I don't think reform started in October 17, 2019. The emphasis shifted. But there are reformers trying always in Lebanon, and they fail. And I don't think it's their fault. Which goes back to the other question of, I think you asked about social
So it's the fault, whose fault it is? Because you know it's always the fault of someone else.
There are times in history where it is someone else's fault. And I don't think East Berliners should be blamed for the wall that went up. It is their victory that the wall came down. But the heroism happens when Soviet troops do not enter East Germany. And the East German regime does not fight back. Things change forever. And of course, it takes maybe 6-7 decades. But the fact is, no one was questioning Nazis' involvement in killing Jews. And there are many success stories in the Nuremberg trials and all the other things that happened. Us, we are begging for a special tribunal that gives us watered down emotional responses. And you're right, time does make a big difference. And it didn't happen here, yes, absolutely. And you're right, the verdict, that was it 2-3 weeks ago, whenever it happened, very, very few people even noticed or cared. But I don't think that's because Lebanese want the situation to persist. I wouldn't blame Lebanese for that reality. When you challenge Hezbollah in this country in an effective way, you're either killed or you end up like the worst crowd in Lebanon that has been governing us. Which I'll just add, Nizar, one thing. I agree with you. The most pandering, mediocre politicians that we grew up with and we're living with are the collateral to decades of either assassinations or compromising agents, or for that matter, politicians that used to fight the regime and are part of it today. Quick analogy. Michel Aoun was the loudest, most volatile, anti-Syrian, anti-Hezbollah figure in the 1980s, 1990s. He comes back to Lebanon, he's part of the regime and he supports it. Saad Hariri is the son of Rafiq Hariri. His career is actually defined now as Hezbollah's preferred prime minister. And I think Nabih Berri, if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, has the most Hezbollah soldiers' blood on his hands in the 1980s. And today, he's their preferred alternative. I don't blame Lebanese for that, or sectarianism for that. That is something beyond our control. When you test the waters, you're either kicked out, you're in self-imposed exile, or you're killed. This is from intelligentsia, from traditional politicians, to everyone in every aspect of Lebanese society.
Frankly, I don't know a single example of a country who got reforms and changes and transformation happening without a real, without time and without really also the people pushing for it. I mean, so Moussa, I would like to hear from you.
What could the people have done more than what they did on October 17 and the days after? Tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people all over Lebanon gathered to ask for a different state, for a reform, for something new at all levels. They stayed on the streets for weeks until they got exhausted and went back home because they felt they couldn't face the regime, which was much stronger than they were. To go back to justice. Talking about justice for me here is talking about the judicial system. Because practically in Lebanon, the judicial system, the state judicial system, is one of many dispute resolution bodies. You know that in Lebanon, it's maybe one of the few countries where you have the state judicial system, you have the religious judicial tribunals, you have the tribal judicial system, and the Lebanese have come to some kind of an accepting those alternative dispute resolution instead of having the state. Why? Not because they like it more, because practically they are facing a lack of justice. I cannot even talk of injustice. In certain cases, we have injustice or injustice. But most of the cases, we are facing lack of justice. And unfortunately, or fortunately, for me it's unfortunately, the Lebanese people have ways around. If we didn't have ways around, we would be shouting and trying to change things. But we, unfortunately, by our nature, we try to go around problems to find alternative solutions to those problems. And practically, even in justice, we are also trying to find solutions and not addressing the real problem.
Thank you, Moussa. Andreas.
Moussa just mentioned that for him justice is mainly the judiciary aspect of it, but if you look at it, and again, I'm not here to teach anyone, but it comes to my mind that amnesty law in 1991 directly led to a lack of distributive justice, because it allowed the warlords at the time to continue as they wanted to do, and are still there with their system. So, which contributed to the, definitely contributed to the disastrous economic situation as we have it now. So I guess if you're asking about a social contract, a new social contract, this has the potential, I think, to make good what the amnesty law maybe did wrong, in the sense that it continued and solidified the situation as it was after the Civil War.
Aya.
I mean, I think I'm in the middle. I'm very critical of people who blame the Lebanese for everything that has befallen them, but I also wouldn't, throw our hands up in the air and say there's nothing that we can do because there's an outside power who is controlling a lot. I think there is a middle ground, and I think that the Lebanese throughout the years, in 2015 against the trash crisis, in 2019 with the nationwide, with the uprising, I think people are trying to reclaim the country, the nation, what it means to be Lebanese. And I think that we're starting to see a very big generational divide between the younger generation who participated in those movements and who have less affiliation to the sectarian politicians than our parents and their parents did before. But the situation we're in now is even in the face of such huge popular mobilization in every small town and city across the country for weeks on end, people weren't able to achieve very much because they've realized that the system itself, from the politics to the judiciary to the business and commercial interests to the banking sector, they're all intertwined, and it's very, very difficult for popular mobilization to get rid of this system just like that. I think the work that organizations like Legal Agenda are doing in raising public awareness, trying to introduce certain bills into Parliament, trying to be a monitor over the work that Parliament does, I think these are all incremental steps. But we are now in a space where I think people are very, very disillusioned with their ability to affect change. But here, if I can, I don't want to let the international community off the hook. I'm sorry. I agree that the international community shouldn't interfere in affairs of Lebanon, but also there are certain international legal obligations, certain international treaties, and certain international systems that were set up to deal with situations like, for example, the killing of human rights defenders, like the explosion in the Beirut port. And the fact that the international community is not taking the steps necessary to use this legal system that was created after World War II in order to further human rights, I think is a fault on the part of the international community. So what we're asking for in the case of Lebanon are two things. One is an international investigation into the Beirut blast. And this is not a tribunal. This is not like the STL, and it doesn't replace the domestic prosecutions in Lebanon. The two are very different. So the domestic prosecutions establish individual criminal accountability, and there's a trial, and people have prison time afterwards if they're found guilty. An international investigation would not do that. It would determine what the Lebanese state's responsibility was in violating the right to life of its residents. It's a very different aim. Of course, the hope is that the international investigation would assist the domestic investigation. As you mentioned, lack of resources is a big issue, but it does not replace it. The second is the issue of sanctions. We don't advocate for sanctions against an entire country. Those often end up harming the population, not the leaders. But there are individual targeted sanctions that can be applied to those who are engaged in grave corruption and human rights abuses. And many countries around the world, including the UK, the US, Canada, the European Union, have some form of these sanctions regimes to hold individuals accountable when they commit these grave corruption or human rights abuses. And yes, the international community did pass a framework or the EU did pass a framework last year for sanctioning Lebanese leaders, but then didn't place anyone on those sanctions list. So when you wield a stick, you need to follow through, or else the Lebanese politicians get comfortable thinking that they can keep going the way that they have been for the last 30 years without any accountability.
Yeah. Thank you. I have been asked to be very provocative in my questions. It's not because I heard Moussa saying blaming. I'm not here to blame anyone. On the contrary, we are here really to try to find together ways for things to move. And it will take time. I mean, yes, and I don't think that we can say that the uprising in October 2019 did not lead to some changes. I mean, we have also to give them the credit. But the way, there is a long way ahead. So it takes patience, persistence, and of course, continuation of the fact. I would like now to open the floor for questions. Yes? فيكم تسألوا بالعربي طبعا. Okay. تفضل. المايك please.
First of all, I would like to thank dear Ronnie because he...
Can you please introduce yourself? Thank you.
I am Bahjat Salame. I'm the Vice President of Liqa Sayyid al-Jabal and one of the founders of the Lebanese Council of the evacuation of the Iranian occupation from Lebanon. And this council proved that Lebanon is really actually occupied. And you are talking about justice without mentioning that the basic and the head of all justice and legal issues is the Constitution. We are living in a country where 80% of our Constitution is not yet implemented. None of you mentioned that. Mr. Nizar mentioned the system of the, what you call the presidents of the gangs. Yes, but this is a result, Mr. Nizar. This is not the reason. The reason is because we are, and we proved that we are an occupied country, a totally occupied country on every single inches of the 10,452 kilometers square. So this is why Mohammed Chatah was killed. Mohammed Chatah was the first one to point on the Iranian occupation and mainmise over Lebanon. Lokman, with whom I had the pride to work with, was one of the people who proved the occupation. And when we say we are an occupied country, all the injustice we are talking about, and you mentioned, is a result and is not the reason. So you are talking about the result, and in order to find the reason or the solution, I think we should all discuss and talk about the reason and the source. So thank you, everyone, with respect to everyone, but I really thank Ronnie and Reina especially because there is a little bit. And talking about civil society. Civil society did what they had to do.
We have a new member of the panel.
So, no, the question is, the civil society that you are talking about, we are not in Sri Lanka, we are not in Egypt, we are an occupied country. It's not the problem of our leaders or about the administrators. It's a talk between the mafia and the militia. The militia protects the mafia, and the mafia has all the rest. So I would have liked that this panel, especially on Lokman anniversary, talks about what Lokman would have liked to talk about the real reason, which is occupation, and not the result of the occupation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other intervention? Yes, please. Can you? No, we don't hear you. Sorry.
Marie-Jo Sader, I'm a journalist for L'Orient Le Jour. I'm quite disappointed because Mrs. Najat Saliba just left the room. And I don't know if there's any other MP who was invited. But I was not here in the first beginning of the conference, and I don't know if you talked about the parliament. Can we talk about justice without talking about the parliament? You were, Mrs. Najat, you were talking about the people of Lebanon and their will. In a democracy, people are represented by the parliament. What is doing Lebanese parliament? And we have two cases that can show how weak and non-efficient is this parliament. Is first that there is a reform for justice which is sleeping in this parliament, which will prevent the political interference in our judicial system, which is they are naming all the judges of our country, and these judges are taking decisions according to corruption, fear, and they're under pressure. And the parliament is not voting for this. Second, we all laugh every time about what's going on with the port blast, because we say every time these accused are filing complaints against Tarek Bitar, and he's like forced to suspend the probe, and they're doing this all the time. But do you know that if the parliament wants, he can stop this? He can just stop this law and vote another one. So yeah, I would have loved to hear some new MPs about that. Which is a bit despairing for me is that most of these MPs were re-elected today, so I don't know what's the future about, of our parliament. So thank you.
Thank you. Monsieur?
مساء الخير، شكرا لكم جميعا. واليوم هو ذكرى، فعلا ذكرى كتير للقمان، الله يرحمه. لقمان اللي كان الأب الروحي لجمعية المعتقلين اللبنانيين بالسجون السورية، اللي مسكنا على ايدنا من سنة 2008 لحد ما توفى، وعم بتكمل مونيكا. أنا ما في شيء من العدالة اللي بطلبها إلا عدالة إلهية لمعتقلينا اللي هن بالسجون السورية، اللي عددهم 622 معتقل ما زالوا بالسجون السورية. وهيدي العدالة هي بتضل منقوصة، والدولة بتضل منقوصة كرامتها إذا ما استعادت كل معتقلينا من الخارج، وخاصة من السجون السورية. أنا بس إذا بتسمحوا لي بدي أخذ دقيقتين زيادة وأحكي بشغل صغيرة، قصة يعني. كان صار لي 7 أيام بالمعتقل، كنت كلني مكسر مطبش بزنزانة، وبلحظة صغيرة فتح الباب بقوة وزتوا لي ولد صغير عمره شي 12-13 سنة على الغرفة. هالصبي كمان الدم فيه، شفت حالي فيه لأنه كله مدمى ومكسر ومطبش مثلي مثله. جربت تحط ايدي على وجهه، ضربني. بعدين خبرته انه انا معتقل لبناني وانت مثل ابني، وشوي هدي. خبرني انه هو لقى بالزباله 13 قنبله، جابون كمشون مخابرات وفكروه مع الاخوان المسلمين، لانه عم بحكيكم انا بنهايه الثمانينات تقريبا. هالصبي نظفت له جروحه، شوي ارتاح. ما عندي شيء، كان مقطوع عني اكل، المي ممنوعة عنا، كان صار لي فترة بسيطة يعني 7-8 أيام ما عندي شيء. صبي صار يبكي، قال لي عمو بدي طلب منك. قلت إن شاء الله ما يطلب. قلت له لا مي عندي، لا خبز عندي، لا أكل عندي، شو بدك؟ قال لي بدي ماما. حط صدره راسه على صدري، عبطته، صار يبكي وأنا بكيت، لأنه بلحظتها كمان أنا بدي أمي، كمان بدنا أمنا. وأنا هالعدالة هيدي ما بتتحقق بعدالة حقيقية، بدنا العدالة الإلهية لتقدر تتحقق. من العراق لنلحق سوريا، لليمن، للبنان، لأنه نحن محتلين من إيران، وهالاحتلال هذا هو اللي مغيب كل هالعدالة عنا. وشكرا لكم.
شكرا.
Thank you. My name is Nadim Shhade. I'm
known as the champion of many lost causes. I want to, yes. I mean, we owe it to Lokman today to speak the truth. And the truth is that Lokman was assassinated with bullets in his head. If we sit here and we say that Lokman was a heavy smoker, used to drink, didn't exercise, had high cholesterol, and all that, we are, in a way, diverting from the truth. And the truth is very valuable, and what the Special Tribunal for Lebanon gave us was the truth. And so I want to ask my friend Nizar, and I want to ask Aya, who represent two very important institutions in Lebanon that look for justice, that when you divert attention, why are you ignoring the truth? What have you produced about the Special Tribunal for Lebanon? Because hiding the truth is also serious, a serious matter on that, or ignoring the truth is also a serious matter. And I've looked at, I mean, I'm a very avid reader of everything that you produce in the agenda, but I've never seen anything about the special tribunal, and the same with Human Rights Watch also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take two other questions, so we can give an opportunity to the panelists to reply to it. Three questions. في هون وفي حدا طلب هونيك. Yes, and here.
Okay, my name is Reina Sfeir. I'm a psychologist, lecturer at St. Joseph University of Beirut. رح أحكي بالعربي. بدي أقول شغلة بالنسبة لشعور المواطنين أو اللبنانيين بالمواطنة. أنا بعتقد كفاح نحن بلش من كتير زمان. يعني أنا بتذكر حالي بالجامعة أيام الاحتلال السوري، كيف كنا ننزل بالUSG ونشارع ونحمل ونصرخ سوريا طلعي برا وناكل رش مي ويتوقفوا الشباب بيناتنا وينحطوا بالحبس. أنا بتذكر كل مانيفستاسيون عملناها تنطلب بس بالسيادة اللبنانية أيام نحن كنا ستودنتس. أنا اللي بدي أقوله إنه أي عدالة بس ما يكون عنا حقوق. برجع بتذكر بس نزلنا من بعد ما اغتالوا رفيق الحريري وكل حدا من ما بسميهم شهداء، أنا 14 أدار ضحايا 14 أدار، لأن في اغتيال شهيد بده يموت منه قديس، هيدا ما في شهداء، هي كولتور الشهيد منا لوجيك، بلعونا إياها تنقعد نترحم عليهم وما نطلب الحقيقة بحقهم. بتذكر كنا ننزل وكل ما ننزل نطالب يقتلوا واحد، كل يوم يجينا مات بيير جميل، مات هيدا، كل ما يغتالوا واحد ننزل على الشارع يغتالوا اللي بعده. صفينا نخاف ننزل، الناس خافت، الشعب اللبناني تروماتيزي تيتانيزي. أنا بتذكر كل شي صار، كل شي كنا على الأرض. أنا كنت ب17 تشرين فتحنا خيمة قعدنا ولقمان كان تحت، واخر وحده من الخيم يلي كنت انا ولقمان قاعدين فيها فاتوا بالقمصان السود وصرخوا شيعة شيعة شيعة. هو وقف بوجهن وتبلش يضحك قال لي ما تخافي تعي نوقف بوجهن. قلت له لا انا ما فيي، ما رح اروح فداهن. ركضت عيطت للجيش قلت له وطن بليز، عم بعيطوا شيعة نازلين بسلاح، عمل شيء ما عمل شيء الجيش. بتذكر كنا نعمل جروب دو بارول تنحضن بلانير عم بحكي فيهم لان كان على العلن. يجوا الطلاب يقولوا لي ماما خايفه علينا ما بقى فينا ننزل، نحن خايفين يعملوا لنا شيء. الناس وقفت تنزل بعد 17 تشرين. نحن الحق من حقوق الانسان كلها، الحق بالاكسبرسيون، لو دروا على لا في، حق بالحياه، الحق بس الواحد يعبر عن الاوبينيون بوليتيك تبعه بلا ما حدا يضطهده. نحن اضطهدنا، حرقوا الثورة، بعتوا لنا مخابراتهم على الأرض، الشاب يلي يبيع الهيدا. أنا بتذكر كنا بنوفمبر سقعة وأنا تحت وانزل يقولوا لي فتحت الكابينات تحت أو سكرتي، ينكتوا معي بالعيلة. أوكي بس أنا كنت انزل وضلينا ننزل، وصار من بعد 4 آب ونزلنا، وأنا كمان صار عندي مثلي حدا، ومن بعدها وكمان لقمان كلنا عشنا وعشنا لقمان اللي قتلوه. أنا اليوم بس اكتب مقال وبينزلوا لي إياه الأوريون لو جور، كلهم بيقولوا لي رح نلاقيكي ميتة على شيكوع. إنه هيدا الشيء نحن حريتنا اللي عم ندافع عنها، مش الشعب اللبناني ما عمل شيء. الشعب اللبناني شعب تيتانيزي تروماتيزي. حدا من أهالي الضحايا قالت لي وين الشعب عم يحرقوا السيلو؟ قلت لها شعب ما بقى قادر، شعب خايف، شعب بانسي اوبيراتوار. بتعرفوا شو يعني؟ بس واحد ياخذ أول كف، ثاني كف، ثالث كف، بيمشي وخلص ما بقعد مركز كيف الناس تروماتيزي وجههم ما بقعد في اكسبريسيون. هيدا هو الشعب. هيدا سوري انا حكيت كتير بس بدي اعطي اسبي بسيكولوجيك ما بدي ينهمل من الوضع يلي نحن فيه اليوم جراء سياسه الترهيب والسلاح غير شرعي. مش رح طول.
Hi, I'm Lien, and I don't represent anyone other than myself. I mean, everyone is impressive. My question is a kind of what, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but the last person said, which I agree with a lot, but I don't really know what is there to do. Like, we live in such anxiety, and talking is so nice, and it's so inspiring, but what is there to do, especially for my generation? I'm 20. I still have, inshallah, so many years to go, you know? So other than the psychological effect, is there, like, do you think in the system that we are today with the international aspects of everything, because we cannot say that we cannot build a country without taking in consideration other countries like Iran, but also the US, Israel, Russia, and all of the superpowers that are in place right now. So I think today it's a very special, it's a very special context that has never been seen before because of, you know, globalization. So is there a way to unionize? Is there a way for mutual aid that can be done? And also to deal with the types of justices that Moussa talked about, which is religious, but also state. So that's my question. What's the plan?
مساء الخير جميعا، وسأتكلم بالعربية. حسن الأمين من مؤسسة العلامة الأمين للتعارف والحوار To Know Each Other Foundation. صراحة ستكون مداخلة أكثر منها أسئلة إذا أمكن، يعني بعد إذنك. أولا تحية للقمان في عيد ميلاده. لقمان سليم قبل أن يغتال تعرض للتحريض. المحرض هو مسؤول عن الجريمة أيضا، والساكت عن التحريض مسؤول عن الجريمة. في الأمثال تروى في الأمثال العربية القديمة وأيضا عن السيد المسيح عليه السلام بما يملح الملح إذا الملح فسد. نحن الذي نريد دولة المواطنة والمؤسسات إننا ندافع عن دولة لا تدافع عمن يدافع عنها ولا تحميهم، بل أصبحنا نشعر أن من هم في الدولة هم يريدون السلاح خارجها وهم يريدون الفساد أيضا. فما هو مصير هذه المعاهدات التي أقامتها الدولة اللبنانية مع المؤسسات الدولية؟ إذا فسدت السلطة من يحاسبها؟ من يقوم على حماية مواطنيها من فسادها؟ ما هو دور المجتمع الدولي الذي يعلم بكل هذه الأمور؟ أما بخصوص جريمة المرفأ ليس بحاجة أن نقيم أظن يعني محكمة خاصة، هناك محكمة الجنايات الدولية، وهناك تقصير كبير في رفع هذا الأمر إليها. هناك يعني فساد ممنهج وتدمير للدولة ممنهج. من يقوم بوقف هذا التدمير؟ من يقوم بوقف هذا القتل اليومي لنفسيات المواطنين اللبنانيين؟ أليس الأوطان حيث يكرم الإنسان؟ أين هي الكرامة التي نبنيها في بناء؟ عندما تنهار الدولة ينهار كل شيء، ليس المؤسسات، ليس القضاء الذي هو أساس كل شيء، كما يقول السيد المسيح عليه السلام: ليس بالخبز وحده يحيا الإنسان بل بكل كلمة تخرج من فم الله. إذا لم نقم عدالة، إذا كان هناك قاض يخاف، فلماذا يبقى في القضاء؟ لتستمر المأساة؟ إذا كان هناك قاض يخاف عن قول الحقيقة ثم يقول: إذا أردت أن أقول الحقيقة فاحضر لي من يحميني، إنه ميت الأحياء لأنه لا يقول الحقيقة. وإذا كان لا يريد أن يقول الحقيقة فليستقل من القضاء، هذا أقل واجباته. أيضا هناك مسؤولية كبيرة نتخلى عنها. أما بالنسبة للشعب اللبناني دكتور، الشعب اللبناني تم إفقاره، والفقير بحسب التاريخ ليس هو من يغير، الذي يغير هو الطبقة الوسطى. الطبقة الوسطى تم إفقارها، نصفها لم يستطع الخروج ونصفها هاجر، ورأينا الذين هاجروا من الطبقة الوسطى كيف أدلوا بأصواتهم بشجاعة من كل الطوائف. بالنسبة للبرلمان اللبناني، طبعا أختنا في اللوريون لجور، أنا أحاول أن أستذكر، اسمحوا لي، يعني كيف يمكن لأحزاب لا تجري انتخابات داخلها أن تكون مؤهلة أصلا لخوض انتخابات نيابية؟ ليس هناك رئيس حزب في لبنان إلا لا زال رئيسا لحزبه منذ 30 سنة. من الذي يشرف على انتخاباتهم؟ هؤلاء يريدون ديمقراطية في المؤسسات. طبعا إذا أردنا أن نتكلم عن الفرق بين الديمقراطية التوافقية والتوافق على الديمقراطية، هؤلاء يريدون أن يوهموا العالم بأنهم ديمقراطيون بإجراء انتخابات، ولكنهم لا يجرون انتخابات داخل أحزابهم، ولا تشرف على انتخاباتهم الدولة اللبنانية. شكرا جزيلا لكم. هناك الكثير، رحم الله لقمان، والعدالة لكل المظلومين. أريد أن أستذكر شيئا آخر. في العام الماضي ومنذ عامين تم التحريض أيضا على الوالد العلامة السيد علي الأمين، التحريض على قتله، وتم توريط القضاء اللبناني في قبول الادعاءات ضده. هناك يتم تمهيد للجريمة وتسكت عنه الدولة، وأحيانا تشارك به لكي تتهرب من مسؤولياتها. شكرا جزيلا لكم.
شكرا.
زينة يوسف. أنا بس بدي أقول إنه نحن لازم من اليوم وبالرايح نبلش نحط حلول. صرنا نعرف المشاكل كلها. نحن ما عندنا رجال للأسف، لأنه الرجال سياسية عندهم مواقف أتحفون. ما بدنا نضيع الشنكاش. معروف مين هو خارب البلد. الثنائي المسلح، حزب الله هو حزب الشيطان. في أولوية بالمشاكل. كل اللي قلتوهم تفضلتوا قلتوهم مزبوطين. نحن قلنا من أي متى عم نحارب وعم ننزل على الشارع واللي بدكن إياه. مين حامي هيدي الطبقة الفاسدة؟ قبل كلهم الميليشيا، هيمنة الميليشيا من كل الأحزاب. يعني هو اللي بالوجه وهن اللي تحت الطاولة عم بيتخاووا معه. ما نتخبى وراء إصبعنا. إذا ما قدرنا، وفي شيء كتير مهم يلي نحن بإيدنا هو القرار 1559. ما حدا ولا واحد سياسي أو حزبي بيحكي بالموضوع. نحن تنخلص من الميليشيات بدنا دولة، وليكون بدنا دولة بدنا جيش يحمينا. تنقدر هيدا الشيء بدنا نجرد السلاح. وأنا سوري دومازيل، ما بقبل نقول شيعة شيعة. الثنائي المسلح ما بيمثل كل الشيعة. لقمان مات الله يرحمه، أوكي، أول إنسان شيعي، وأنا بفتخر بيمثلني لأنه وقف، طلع الرجال ووقف قدام السبب الأساسي. إذا كل الشعب اللبناني كله حكي فاضي، ما تزعلوا مني، إذا كل الشعب اللبناني مش مثل وقت 2005 نزلوا كلهم على الشارع وقالوا إيران وحزب الله برا رح نضلنا بنفس المعمعة ولبنان راح.
Thank you. مهم كثير أن نحترم آراء الكل، وكل واحد من حقه أن يكون عنده رأيه، ولازم أكيد نحترم آراء الكل بليز. هلا أكيد مع كل اللي سمعته في كثير أشياء، بس there was a clear question to you Nizar and to you Aya regarding the truth, so I think it's important to address it. The role of the parliament and the role of the international community. So I'll ask you, Aya, to start, then Nizar, then Andreas, then Moussa, then Ronnie, and then, yes.
Okay, Nadim, to answer your question about why Human Rights Watch hasn't written very much about the STL, the answer is going to be unsatisfactory, but it's an issue of capacity. We have one person who covers every country, and there were issues at the time in Lebanon that were more urgent to be responded to. I know it's not a satisfactory answer, but there's no programmatic or political reason that wasn't covered. It was merely an issue of capacity. On the role of the parliament, I mean, absolutely, parliament should be the representative of the population, and parliament does have a very big opportunity to present laws that advance rights and justice and accountability in the country. Unfortunately, parliament, however, is a representation of the political system in Lebanon and not of the will of the population. And so we see politicians not acting, or representatives in parliament not acting as representatives of the people who elected them, but as defenders of the political parties that they're a part of. So the laws that they block, the laws that they advance, are ones that advance their narrow interests and not those of the entire population. It's great to see the new faces that we have in parliament, but I think it's, they're, depending on how many you want to count, 10 to 16 new independent MPs, they're not going to be able to change the kinds of laws that Parliament passes, but I think they have an opportunity to make Parliament more accessible to the population, to be public about what laws are being discussed, what laws are on the agenda, sharing draft laws with civil society and the public for consultation, letting us know about the subcommittee or the committee meetings that are taking place and what was discussed and what laws were on the agenda, so they have a role in bridging this gap between the people and Parliament and allowing the population to act as a watchdog to the work of Parliament.
Thank you, Aya. Nizar.
طيب رح أبلش بالأسئلة الهينة. قصة البرلمان يعني المهم جدا لما بدنا نحكي عن برلمان حقيقي أنه يكون المناقشات اللي عم تصير بالبرلمان علنية. واحدة من المشاكل الكبيرة اليوم بكل اللجان أنه المناقشات غير علنية، ولو كانت علنية كان بيتحملوا مسؤولية كلامهم وبيكونوا جديين أكثر بالعمل. نحن اليوم في عنا قانونين لاستقلال القضاء موجودين هنيك ومهمين جدا، وخاصة بما نحن نتعلق فينا هون. يعني أنا ما بنسى أنه لحظة اللي توفى فيها لقمان وعرفنا أنه رايحة قتل فيها لقمان ورايحة على النائب العام تبع الجنوب، كان عامل قلق كتير، لأن بنعرف نائب العام الجنوب مين بخص، وبالتالي بلشت المشكل من هون. يعني هيدي كانت نقطة البداية يلي كان في وضوح كتير أنه نحن رايحين متجهين للإمبيونيتي، لأنه بس كمان كان مناسبة حتى ينشرح للشعب اللبناني كله هيك تتوزع النيابات العامة، وكل واحد بياخد نائب عام من طائفته بمنطقته لحتى يقدر يستعمله كمفتاح انتخابي وكيد له لحتى يحط يلي بده بالحبس ويقتل يلي بده بدون ما يتلاحق والى اخره. وبالتالي كان بلش المشكل هون. طيب هيدا مشكل مش بس بقضيتنا اليوم، بكل القضايا اللي عم تنطرح اول ما يكون في حدا عم بيواجه القوى بالمنطقه بالجنوب يلي هن الثنائي، كمان ما بحب سميه ثنائي الشيعي، بحب سميه ثنائي امل حزب الله يعني. فهيدا المحل المشكله بلبنان انه ما بقى في حدا قوي بيقدر القضاء يوقف بوجهه، مش لانه القاضي دائما ضعيف، لانه المراكز القويه كلياتها تسيست. المراكز القوية مثل النيابات العامة وكذا أخذت لون طائفي، كل واحد اختار اللون يلي بده إياه بمنطقته، وبعدين صار يحط حدا من جماعته لحتى يعني تطيفت لحتى يصير تابع للزعيم تبع الطائفة. وبالتالي اليوم بس ما بكفي نقول انه القاضي شجاع وبده يعمل يلي بده، ما كمان القاضي شخص واقف قدام نظام مخيف، يعني مثل طارق بيطار كان خايف واقف قدام نظام مخيف. حس الناس معه بيمشي القاضي، حس الناس تركوه لحاله بده يضعف مثل اي انسان. ما عم بحكي عن طارق بيطار يلي هو برهن عن شجاعه واستقلاليه خياليه، ولكن عم بحكي بشكل عام اي قاضي بده يضعف. مشان هيك القضاء هو كمان نحن كيف بدنا ندعم القاضي وكيف بدنا نعمل جهد كبير حول المحكمة. ومشان هيك المحكمة الوطنية ممكن تكون تؤدي لنقاش عام كتير كبير. ما بحياتنا بلبنان كان في نقاش عام على موضوع الحصانات مثل اللي حصل يوم المرفأ، واكتشفنا قديش بشاعة هيدا نظام الحصانات وبينطبق من الكبير للموظف للمحامي إلى آخره. وبالتالي كنا عم نكتشف بعيوننا المجردة الامبيونيتي سيستم. بكرة في جلسة بالمجلس النيابي مهمة جدا، مهمة جدا لقسم كبير من اللبنانيين بموضوعنا تبع الامبيونيتي يلي هي السرية المصرفية. في محاولة غدا من جمعية المصارف أنه تعمل أنه السرية المصرفية بتنرفع من هلأ والرايح، بس كل القيود يلي صايرة من قبل ما بينعرف شيء منها، وبالتالي كل عملية المحاسبة عن الماضي بتنلغى. طب هيدا موضوع أساسي كمان وبيهمنا كتير كموضوع عدالة وإلى آخره. وبالتالي حبيت اقول هاي الاشياء اللي كمان ضوي على الفكره الاساسيه انه نحن ضروري يكون في وضوح جدا بالرؤيه. ممكن نختلف بالتشخيص، ممكن نختلف وين السبب وين الريزلت وكذا، بس كلنا عارفين شو لازم كمان الشغلات المشتركه بيناتنا نمشي فيها حتى نقدر نقدم للامام. بتصور هيدا شيء اساسي ومركزي. بموضوع المحكمة الدولية، ليش نحن ما كمفكرة ما اعطيناها؟ كتبنا على المحكمة الدولية ببعض الحالات، ما كتبنا عن الحكم بس كتبنا على مبدأ المحكمة الدولية وقديش نحن ممكن نكون مع ولا ضد ومشاكلها. ووقت المرفأ كمان اعطينا رأينا بصراحة، يعني بالأول طريق انه ما مش برأينا شيء عملي انه كل واحد كل مرة بصير جريمة كبيرة انه بيراهن على محكمة دولية. بس أكيد الرهان تبعنا والعمل تبعنا والجهد تبعنا والتركيز تبعنا هو كيف بدنا نأمن عدالة لكل اللبنانيين، لأنه نحن مؤمنين أنه العدالة بالآخر هي شيء اجتماعي، هو شيء مفروض الناس وهيدا اللي بيقدم بالكلام. هلا ابدا ما فيني اقول للضحايا ما تروحوا او ما تطالبوا بمحكمه دوليه، لانه لحديت اليوم ما في قضاء وطني قادر. بس انا عم بحكي كمنظمه حقوقيه هدفها بالاخر ان توصل للعداله للجميع. شكرا.
ميرسي. اندرياس بليز.
To our colleague from L'Orient du Jour, I was by coincidence in Parliament when, before the elections, a draft law was discussed, although discussed is not the right word, on the abuse of demands of recusals in the judiciary. And it is a story in itself, I can tell you maybe later on, but it was disappointing how it worked in Parliament, I must say. And maybe again to contribute from the German discussion, we had a law only in 2019 against the obvious misuse of continuous or repetitive demands of recusals in trials. So again, this is possibly a message of strategic patience to have, because things take their time. I wanted to mention, if I may, on earlier discussion on impunity, although I don't want to bring it to full bloom again, but it seems to me as an outsider interesting to look carefully where there is impunity, because we tend to say there's a culture of impunity, but if there is an interest in investigating crimes, then crimes are investigated. If someone is killed in the Dachje and it's got nothing to do with the group that's in rain there, it can be investigated. But if they don't want it to be investigated, and the police tell you that in order to enter the Dachia and to investigate, they need a visa. So it shows you the difficulty of the situation we have here. On your question, or not letting me off the hook, Aya, on sanctions, I fully agree that it is disappointing that we have a framework of sanctions since last July, and in Annex 1 there is no one. This is a matter of consensus among 27 member states of the European Union. It's a complicated and slow mechanism. Some of the EU member states can have their bilateral sanctions, and some actually do this. The UK has bilateral sanction mechanism, the US and so on, and some of them actually use this mechanism also for Lebanon. In the European Union, you have diverse opinions on Lebanon, and it will be difficult to fill Annex 1 with names, but I have not given up, and I think it's there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity there. So we'll see. I mean, this sanctions regime is being prolonged. It's being it will come again. So let's see what can be done. And in the sanctions. In the sanctions regime, there's the third criterion is financial misconduct and corruption, and maybe there I can also give a glimmer of hope to the 20-year-old lady in the background who has the age of my daughters, that. When we have an investigation in Europe that is also on a person who is also investigated here, but the investigation in this country is not progressing, there is a chance that the investigation in the European country is progressing faster than here, and by that way, I think there can be a incremental progress in terms of, investigating and judging someone who is part of the system and who is, if judged, maybe an entry point for a bigger change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
أنا بالنسبة حضرتك كنت عم تقول إنه بالنسبة للمرفق كان لازم ناخده قدام المحكمة الجنائية الدولية. لبنان منه موقع على نظام روما، وحتى لو موقع يعني للأسف الجريمة كتير كبيرة وعظيمة، بس ما بتدخل بالمكونات تبع الجرائم الدولية يلي بنظام روما. عن هيك هيدا الشيء ما بيزبط، بس ما ضروري يعني ينعمل محكمة جديدة بلا هاي. فينا ناخد مثل تبع كمبوديا يكونوا بلبنان مؤلفة من قضاة لبنانية وأجانب يقدروا يعني بيعطوا أولاً إذا شيء credibility وكمان protection للقضاة اللبنانية، وبتكون بلبنان وما بتصرف مصاري قد ما فينا نناقش فيهم يعني هولي، بس بدها قانون، أكيد بدها قانون.
بس أنا بدي أقول إنه الشيء اللي حكيت عنه آية ونحن وقعنا عليه كمان يلي هو طلب أنه يكون في تحقيق دولي، يعني مساعدة تقنية دولية بهذا المحل لحتى نضمن أنه يكون في، لأنه الأمور كمان في عندها بعد دولي مهم. بس المهم جدا يعني برأيي كمان مرة تانية أنه يضل المحكمة اللبنانيين عم بيكونوا بكونتاكت يومي مع، يتعلموا منها، يعرفوا شو المشاكل، من خلالها يكونوا عم بيدوروا كل النظام.
مزبوط. أنا عن هيك بستغرب مع نديم كيف انه هيومن رايتس ووتش وليجل اجندا ما حكيوا اكثر عن الحكم. يعني عم نحكي عن لا عداله. اذا عملنا تابلوين بالبوليتيكال اساسينيشن، محمد شطح 0 كونفيكتد، جبران تويني 0 كونفيكتد، بيير جميل 0، نزلنا كلهم 0 0 0، محكمه 3 كونفيكتد. سو كيف انه ما حكينا عن هذا الموضوع؟ يعني ما يعني للاسف بقى بقى ثانك يو نديم على السؤال.
Thank you, Reina. Ronnie? I keep Moussa at the end.
Oh, sure. So I actually agree with Mary Jo. I wish Najat was still here. And I will try to answer the young lady's question in the back about what we can do. I think that's actually the right question. That's actually the kind of question I entertain on a daily basis. I think it seems odd, but the new MPs, for better or worse, I think the burden is on them. Because change to me should not be the status quo, or it shouldn't be pandering. It shouldn't be finding yourself in a situation that you're repeating the same mistakes of 2005 and 2009. When some reformers did enter parliament, we don't talk about them anymore. You want this round to be different. And then it becomes a problem, I think, and this is my take on the situation. I think the problem is diplomacy. We don't have leverage with Iran. Our ambassador to Iran is Hezbollah. And Iran's ambassador to Lebanon is Hezbollah. That's a situation Lebanese cannot handle. We cannot talk to Iran about what they would need to let go of this country. And it sounds maybe like a stupid framework. Maybe it's very naive, but I think that creative solution maybe opens the door to at least understanding what Lebanon could look like without another country's burden in our geography. And I'll just take issue with the semantics. I don't think it's occupation. And a friend mentioned earlier the word occupation. I don't think that is the right word. This stuff is so invisible. You can live in Lebanon and never see it. Unlike the Syrian years, where you actually dealt with it, sometimes on a daily basis, Hezbollah you don't really deal with on a daily basis. And I think you can live here and not know that this thing is here. I think it's a battlefield role we're stuck with. It's battlefield, it's war zone. And our geography is still playing that kind of role to the region. In the old years, it was the Arab-Israeli conflict. Then it was the Syrian regime's survivability. Now it's Iran's military infrastructure, which maybe is more important to them than nuclear technology. They seem interested in negotiating nuclear technology all the time. I don't think they have been forced to discuss their security condition in Lebanon. So I think, it sounds odd, it's not Najat Saliba's role, but it's an MP like her that is at least entertaining the cause for diplomacy. And I think messaging is key. I may lose friends for saying this, but I think the more we talk about sectarianism and gender issues and corruption to anyone with leverage when it comes to the Iranian burden, I don't think they're hearing the problem. I think they're thinking that our problems are so local, Lebanese are the problem. And I simply don't think that's true. Now I'll take it to another section about social contract. I'll end this part quickly. Here's my analogy. You put everyone in Lebanon today, you put them on a boat and you set them on to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So all of us, the 4 million of us or whatever's left of here, we go to a boat in the middle of the ocean. There's no Iran, there's no Israel, no America, nothing. We're alone in the ocean. I think within 5 minutes we'd have a Maronite captain, a Sunni co-captain, and a Shia co-captain. And I think that's what we would do automatically. But give us some time in the middle of the ocean alone, we'll start reforming that. And it'll begin to make sense for 2022, not for 1922. So I think that's the journey of reform. I wouldn't rush too far into the social contract issue without unplugging us from the geopolitical issue. I think that comes later. The last thing, Monika and me, we live in the world of poetic justice. This is the alternative to justice. I'm pretty sure Monika and myself would rather have traditional justice. Not UMAM only, not whatever I do. I think we want real justice. And I think, and I agree with the sentiment shared earlier, if you're not willing to talk about the root cause for what has killed a lot of us, what has also perverted our politics, and what has led us to cripple and collapse, you will never see justice in this country. Poetic justice is fine, but that's not the answer.
Thank you.
If you allow me, I will answer briefly, not to take too much of your time to each question. Mr. Shahadi, thank you for your question. You said that the only truth is that Lokman Slim was assassinated on the 3rd of February by bullets in his head. Allow me to disagree with you. This is not the truth. This is a fact. The truth is who did it, who ordered it, who implemented it, and the justice is to bring everyone to accountability. And even though previous political assassinations in Lebanon have remained unsolved, there is a commitment from the Slim family, from all the team of Lokman Slim, including the legal team, to do everything that is possible to bring the perpetrators to justice. We will not let Lokman Slim's assassination remain under the impunity system. We don't have a TSL for Lokman Slim, but we have all what the means that we have to go to justice, and we are pursuing. I can tell you how many times after Lokman Slim has been assassinated, his family has felt the danger of pursuing justice, and they are committed to it regardless of everything. They are going after the perpetrators until they are brought to justice. Ms. Ziadi, you mentioned trauma and that Lebanese people are tetanized. Yes, but what to do? I would have loved to have solutions. I don't know how to treat people who are traumatized or tetanized, yet those people have proved during 15 years of war, 15 years of Syrian presence, and 15 years of whatever you want to tell it, say it, Iranian presence or whatever, they have proven that they still can fight. October 17, people were on the ground, and I'm pretty sure that they will find the resources needed to rebound. Ms. Sader, yes, Parliament is part of the authorities in the states, and I truly said, and I believe in what I say, all those authorities have abdicated their roles. The judicial, the legislative, and the executive. We do not have any state mode. Do not expect anything from the parliament, including, unfortunately, from those new elected MPs who are minority in a big mass of people who do not want to change anything. Lynn, you talked about globalization. Yes, globalization is a fact. Now we are living in a globalized world. Yes, but justice is an internal service rendered by each country. International justice is an exception. Justice is rendered by each country, and we have to fight for it. Ms. Ziadi talked about justice as a right. Yes, justice is a right, but like every right, it needs to be implemented. When we don't have the right, any right, we fight for the right. And you asked, what is the plan? What is the solution? Ms. Youssef, who is maybe not here anymore, gave you the solution. Oh, Ms. Youssef is still here, okay. Ms. Youssef gave a wonderful solution, rebuild a state. Rebuild a state that will take back all its roles, including giving solution. Thank you, Ms. Youssef. سمعتك حضرتك يعني مداخلتك حلوة كتير بس ما كان فيها سؤال. سمعتك منيح بس ما فيها سؤال. وبالنسبة لروما دكتور سفير أعطتك جواب. نحن منا داخلين بمعاهدة روما. And صحيح بس هون كمان سعادة السفير حكي إنه في بيوروب في بعض المحاولات للضحايا الأجانب. I won't add anything else. I think everybody before me answered fluently and fully, not fluently, fully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nizar. Thank you, Rein. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Aya. Thank you, Moussa. Thank you, Ronnie. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Hannah Jabir, Lokman Slim Foundation, for the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Hannah Jabir, and on behalf of the Lokman Slim Foundation and also of the organizers, I would like to thank you all for your attendance and for your active participation in this very significant day. Also, since English is not my mother tongue, and since the event is taking place in an Arab-speaking country, I apologize to the non-Arabic speaking people in this room, for I will shift to Arabic and I will rely on the translators, on the accuracy of the translation to convey my messages. Voilà. كمان بغتنم الفرصة حتى أشكر المترجمين وكل الناس اللي ساهموا بنجاح هذا اللقاء. سأعقب على جمعتنا هذه التي تمت تحت عنوان العدالة للبنان بمجموعة قصيرة من الملاحظات هي عملياً أشبه ببداهات، بعضها مستنبط والآخر مستنتج والبعض الآخر يطرح نفسه على هامش الندوة وبواقع الحال التي نعيشها. تطرقتم متكلمين ومتكلمات إلى بعض أشكال الجور وامتهاط الخيرات وانتهاك الحدود وترهيب الضمائر، كلها مظالم لم تزل على ذلك وكانت امتدادا من الحرب الأهلية وحتى اللحظة، مما يدفعني إلى طرح الملاحظة الأولى. لو أن العدالة سادت في لبنان على مختلف طوائفه مواطنين وأجانب وعلى مؤسساته، ولو أن القرارات السياسية التي أخذت في شؤون الدولة أوفت السيادة والمواطنة حقهما، لما نشأت في هذا البلد حرب أهلية نعيش تداعياتها حتى اللحظة من شرذمة وفقدان لقرار جامع ترسو عليه مكوناته المجتمعية. تحدث المتكلمون والمتكلمات عن توقيع لبنان أو عدم توقيعه، عن تطبيقه أو عدم تطبيقه، عن انصياعه أو عدم انصياعه لعدد من المواثيق والقوانين الدولية. تطرقوا للعدالة الدولية، لعدم امتثال الحكومة اللبنانية لقرار محكمة العدل الدولية، لآليات الردع من عقوبات ملزمة على لبنان، للمأزق الذي يتواجد فيه القضاء اللبناني تجاه جريمة تفجير المرفأ وتجاه الاغتيالات السياسية، وليس اغتيال لقمان سليم أولها ولا آخرها، مما يؤدي بي إلى ملاحظتي الثانية. وصلت الدولة اللبنانية بمؤسستيها القضائية والأمنية، ناهيك عن التهاوي الاقتصادي المتسارع يوماً عن يوم، وصلت إلى حالة من الوهن والاستباحة تجعل الاستغاثة بالعدالة الدولية أمراً محكوماً بمفارقات مستعصية العناصر والآليات. أتى أيضاً الحديث على التجارب الأوروبية، على دور التقاضي فيها، وعلى الدعم الذي قد تشكله المؤسسات القضائية الأوروبية في دفع عجلة القضاء اللبناني لتحقيق بعض أوجه العدالة. وهنا تأتي ملاحظتي الثالثة. العدالة ممكنة في دول أوروبا، وقد تطال حتى أفراداً ارتكبوا جرائم على غير أراضيها، لأن أركان الحكم في كل من هذه الدول ترسو على مؤسسات قضائية مترسخة وقوانين مستنبطة من عقود مجتمعية قوية يحترمها الجميع دون استثناء. وهنا لا بد من الإشارة إلى تداخل المجتمعات المتزايد في عصر العولمة وبفعل الهجرات وما يتضمنه ذلك من فرص ومخاطر في هذا الحيز بالذات. ثم تطرقت النقاشات إلى تفاعلات المجتمع مع العدالة على مرور الزمن ومع مرور الوقت، عن دور الحقيقة والمحاسبة وقانون العفو العام في إعادة بناء مجتمع لبنان ما بعد الحرب، وعن دور مؤسسات المجتمع المدني
في الحقول دون الإفلات من العقاب. وهنا لابد من الإشارة في ملاحظة رابعة إلى أن قانون العفو العام 1991 لم يتواكب قط لا مع صياغة عقد مجتمعي جديد ولا مع تركيز أركان دولة قانون فعلية تنقل لبنان إلى مرحلة يجدر تسميتها بمرحلة ما بعد الحرب. فبات العفو عن جرائم أمراء الحرب بتصريح لهم بالإمعان في النهب وإفساد البنى التحتية والانقضاض على ما كان متبقيا من مؤسساته المدنية والأمنية، وفرض على أهالي المفقودين والمتوفين والمغتالين ومعاقي الحرب وعلى من فقدوا بيوتهم وسبل عيشهم فرض عليهم نسيان جماعي ممزوج بالذل والذنب والتقصير تجاه أنفسهم وأبنائهم لأنهم لم يتمكنوا من أخذ حق ذويهم من الضحايا. ما يعيش اللبنانيون من ذل يومي واستباحة لحيواتهم وضمائرهم هو امتداد لإذلال عمره عقود، لظلوم أدت بالبلد إلى خراب عمرانه إن اقتبسنا قول ابن خلدون. واليوم إن أردنا ألا يودي الفساد المعمم والمستشري في القضاء وفي المنظومة الحاكمة إلى ما يسميه ابن خلدون نفسه نهاية الدولة، يعني نهاية لبنان، لا بد من يقظة ضرورية وملحة لدى الضمائر الحية والنزيهة ليس فقط في القضاء اللبناني وإنما في كل الفاعلين في المجتمع اللبناني من مؤسسات وأفراد، للضغط على تفعيل قوانين تعيد للبنانيين بعضا من كرامتهم. في هذا الإطار العام وتكملة لمهمتنا التي بدأناها بعد اغتيال الغالي لقمان، سنسعى في مؤسسة لقمان سليم وكما قالت مونيكا إلى جعل اليوم العالمي للعدالة فرصة للقاء سنوي. كما يسرنا أن نحيطكم علما بتأسيس وحدة مخصصة لدولة القانون تعمل على فهم آليات المحاسبة والإفلات من العقاب وإلى إنتاج المعرفة المجتمعية والسياسية في هذا المجال، وعلى ابتكار مساع الابتكار دائما الابتكار مساع وآليات تتوافق مع القانون وترسخه سعيا منا إلى ما هو الأسمى: العدل والعدالة. وأنهي كلامي هذا بكلمة للقمان، إحدى أقواله أو التي ينسبها إلى صديقته الشريرة: القاتل يقتل والسارق يسرق والساكت عن الحق ساكت عن الحق، ونحن لن نسكت عن الحق. الحقيقة والعدالة لضحايا المرفأ، حقيقة والعدالة للقمان ولكل من قضى غيلة، العدالة للبنان ولكل صاحب حق في هذا الولد الوديع. شكراً.